Boys and Girls Watcher, we're going to talk today about another inventor. Remember, we talked about an inventor in our last lesson. This inventor had discovered how to make the light bulb. Do you remember what his name was?
Thomas Edison.
Thomas Edison. Go get a seashell. That girl was listening with her ears, watching with her eyes, and thinking in her brain that she could tell me that today. I'm so proud of you. Good job. And we talked about how if you are an inventor, that means you have invented something that could be very useful, very helpful to people, or maybe just to yourself. And so remember how Thomas Edison, he made the light bulb, and that has been very useful for us, isn't it? We can go to work, we can play, we can come to school, all because now we have electricity and we have light bulbs just like what Thomas Edison did for us a long time ago. Well, I want to talk to you today about another inventor, an inventor who did experiments. That means they tried to do things, they tried over and over again. If you do an experiment, it's only one. But he did lots of experiments. Say that word with me. Experiments. That means he tried different things. He did things and put things together to try to make something very special. This man right here, his name is Alexander Graham Bell. We've talked about him before. Say that name with me. Alexander Graham Bell. Now, his name is pretty special because this man invented something really special, something that we have today. Just like we have the light bulbs that Thomas Edison helped us with today. Now, Alexander Graham Bell, he did experiments and made the very first telephone. He did, the very first telephone. Now, let me tell you about Alexander Graham Bell. When Alexander Graham Bell, his mom, she went deaf. That means she could not hear. Sometimes when you get older, then sometimes your hearing goes. And so Alexander Graham Bell, his mom went deaf. That means she couldn't what?
Hear.
She couldn't hear. And so him and his family worked with deaf people. In fact, when Alexander Graham Bell got married, his wife couldn't hear. She had ears that didn't work. So she couldn't hear noises. She couldn't hear birds chirping. She couldn't hear little chicks pecking. She couldn't hear the cows mooing. She couldn't even hear babies crying. She couldn't hear laughter. She couldn't hear anything. And so Alexander Graham Bell really wanted to work on that. He really wanted to help people like his mom and his wife be able to hear and for people to be able to communicate with each other. Now, when you want to see grandma, some of you, your grandma doesn't live here in town, does she? She doesn't. She probably lives far, far away. Oakley, where does your grandma live? Okay. Does she live in the same house with you?
No.
No, I know your grandma too, so I know you have a grandma. She doesn't live in the same house with you. So if you wanted to talk to grandma, do you have to go stand outside in your front porch and scream, "Grandma"? Is that how you would find her? How would you be able to talk to her?
Tom.
You'd have to call her on the phone, wouldn't you? You do. And so that's why we have telephones today. Now, a long time ago, we had telephones that looked like this. And they would take this part right here, and they would put it up to their ear, and they would talk in this part right here, and it would run through the wires, and the electricity would help to bring the sound. It's called sound waves. Say that with me. Sound waves, and you would be able to hear. But is this the kind of phone you'd carry around with you?
No.
No, you couldn't carry that telephone. That's right. You could not carry it around with you. But then we now have people that did more experiments and made better phones that we have today. And we have one like this. That was like the very first cell phone. Do you see that? And they would carry it around, and it's not connected to any wires, is it? No, it's not. And then now we have ones like this. We have cell phones that mommy can carry around in her purse, and she can carry it around, and you could talk to grandma and grandpa. But before there was one, that's where Alexander Graham Bell came in, and he started to do experiments. Now, they tried all different things to help to get that sound wave. And one day he had a partner. His name was Watson. Say that with me. Watson. Thomas Watson. Say that.
Thomas Watson.
And Thomas Watson, he was helping him with these experiments. They were like partners, and they worked together. And one day, they were doing all kinds of things, and they were talking, and they were doing experiments that weren't together. And all of a sudden, Alexander Graham Bell could hear the noise and the things that Thomas Watson was making, and it was coming over those wires that they had and making the sound waves so that they could hear. Well, they kept working on it because they thought for sure if you could hear noises, surely people could talk to each other and actually hear words and things. Well, one day, Thomas Watson was in another room. It would be like Thomas Watson was over in that other teacher's classroom, and Alexander Graham Bell was in his room, and they were working on things and working on experiments, and they were trying to make the telephone. Well, Thomas Watson, he spilled something all over him, and this stuff could burn him. And so he called out, and he said, Alexander Graham Bell, come in here quick, come in here quick. But you know what? He didn't hear him screaming. He heard it over the telephone wires, over those wires. And he came in and said, how did you do that? How did you make it so you could hear, I could hear you over the telephone? And they worked together, and and Thomas Watson, he forgot that he had spilled something all over himself. Isn't that silly that he forgot that, because they were so excited that they were able to make the very first telephone, and they could hear each other. So it wasn't just noises that they could hear. Now they could hear all of the words that they were saying. And that's how they made the very first telephone. And so now people along over the years have made it where you not only, before they would have telephones on the wall, and you had a long cord, and you could probably walk kind of far away from it, but you really couldn't leave the house with it. You'd have to come, and you'd have to go, and you'd have to put it right back on the wall when you were done. Now we have things like the cell phone, and we can carry those around, and we can call for an emergency when we need it. We can call grandma when we want to say hi, and we can call, maybe mommy has to call daddy at work. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes Mrs. Stewart has to call your mommy and daddy, and so we use the telephone to do that now. All because of what Alexander Graham Bell did. He didn't give up. Oh, he practiced and he practiced and he practiced, and he tried different experiments, and all of those didn't work until that one day when they finally got it to work. You can't give up. Aren't you glad that Alexander Graham Bell didn't give up? He didn't. Now, I want to tell you about another machine that we had a really long time ago, but now, do you know that our military use it? They do. It is called the telegraph. Say that with me.
Telegraph.
The telegraph makes little taps, and different taps mean different things. And so the military uses it when they want to talk to each other. They go like this, and they have different taps. And so one tap might be a number. Another tap might be a word. It might be a person's name. It might be the name of a ship or name of an airplane or something really cool. And so that's how it started. That's how it started to make Alexander Graham Bell think about how not just tapping, not just noises, but be able to talk. And then now we have phones that we can carry around in our purse, all because Alexander Graham Bell didn't give up. So you don't give up. When you're having a problem, if you're having trouble writing your name and keeping it on the right things, on the right lines, are you going to give up and never write your name again? No. How about if you're building something? Maybe you're building something with toys, and you're trying to build something, and maybe it just keeps falling over. Should you just give up and get mad? No. I'm glad that Alexander Graham Bell and Thomas Watson didn't do that. I'm glad they didn't go, this is not working. We've tried lots and lots of times. I'm glad they kept working and worked hard so that they could come up with the very first telephone. And now when you call on the phone and you push the buttons, do you know what those are called? Digits. Say that word with me. Digits. Digits are the numbers. So somebody might say, can I have your digit so I could call you? And that means they want your phone number. You should know your phone number. What if you got lost in a store and you can't find your mommy, and you could find the police officer or the security guard, and you could tell them your phone number, and they could call and get mommy right away. So if you don't know your phone number, you should go home and have mommy tell you your phone number, and you practice it. And then maybe you could come back and tell Mrs. Stewart, and you show me that you have learned your telephone. Boys and girls watching, do you know your telephone number? If you don't, you learn it, and you can tell your on-site teacher, and then maybe you could also let mommy show you how to use the digits. And you could call Grandma and Grandpa and tell them how you learned about who was the inventor of the telephone? Alexander. That's right.